this is like the topic exotic, but the person who is presenting is actually our colleague from School of Finance and Management at SOAS University of London, and Dr. Lawal and Tolulola. So Dr. Lawal is a lecturer in accounting at this department and has been, I think, quite many years. And we have been colleagues, and Tolu is now taking care of our BSc Accounting and Finance as a program director. Program director. So we have our students number of students has been growing well. So thanks to Tulu's hard work. But today, Tulu is going to talk about a new research, and the topic is related to Tulu's background. So in terms of Dr. Lawal's academic background, if you read the introduction, actually quite a lot of different things, so that I just pick up something that I think is important, and so that I can remember clearly. So actually, Tulu got his PhD from a very good university in the UK, Imperial Business School, and in management, actually. And before this degree, I think Tulu got quite a few, how many? Maybe 3 masters. One is MBA from Nigeria, and then another MSc from Nigeria, and then MSc from UK University of Birmingham. So, and more important, I think Tulu's expertise is in accounting. So he is associated with a lot of accounting institute or organization. I think what I know, Tulu is a chartered accountant, and that's what I know, but in different places. And I think Tulu's research is quite much on everything. It's accounting, finance, corporate governance, and capital market imperfections, and it's all related. And Tulu, as far as I know, I didn't check the journals, but Tulu has been active in publishing, and when we talk about research, I always got some kind of impression that Tulu is always very serious about what he's doing in his research, and that is really impressive, very detailed, and set the standard higher. So, so today we are looking at a topic which I call is very exotic topic. So yes, is corporate governance related, because we are now talking about the chairman's letter. So how do we read it? Or what is the readability of a chairman's letter to shareholders? Normally, in the conventional way, we see how the chairman behaves, how the chairman talks about things. But in this paper, I think we can ignore them. We look at how they look like. So, so that's probably I can think. So by looking at how they look like, looking at their face, probably you can get some information. And I said, I discussed with Tulu, it's a little bit scary, because once he knows that, he can measure all of us. So Tulu, very, very interesting topic. I think people are looking forward to your presentation, and I'm sure you can generate some very interesting discussion. So the floor is yours. Tulu.
Yes, thank you, Ong, for the gracious introduction. And thank you, everyone, for joining me today to listen to what I hope will be a very interesting conversation. My approach is for you to stop me where whenever you have questions, and I'll be able to attend them to your question. The topic of discussion today is masculinity and the readability of chairman's letters to shareholders, one of the very important elements of the financial statement or annual report. The roadmap, I'm going to do a little bit of introduction, then I go straight to the literature review and the theoretical background that underline this research. Then I'll speak more about the methodology that we adopt in this research. I'll present some key findings. Then that takes us to the concluding part of this presentation. And thereafter, I'll be willing to get your questions and feedback. For those of us who have accounting background, one of the important issues for preparing financial statements or annual reports is for investors and stakeholders to be able to understand financial statements. As I was saying, one of the important issues in financial reporting is for investors and stakeholders to be able to understand the information presented in annual reports, as this is important for decision making. Understanding the financial report requires a number of qualities, one of which is the readability of the financial report, including the corporate narratives that are included. Research has shown that decision useful financial and non-financial information is important for evaluating corporate performance. And as a result, it promotes efficient allocation of capital, in particular, the role it plays in reducing information asymmetry between management and investors. As a result of this importance, we have seen significant increase in the quantity of financial and non-financial reporting over the years. And this is as a result of regulatory requirements and stakeholder expectations, as well as the recognition of the value of transparency. Notwithstanding the increase in the quantity of information, however, we have seen a number of corporate failures. And when we start to investigate the reasons for these corporate failures, we find that not only is corporate finance implicated, financial reporting is also implicated. More recent examples relate to Thomas Cook, the travel firm. As we look at the reasons for the liquidation of these firms, we see that the financial reporting has been questionable. Therefore, the question that we often ask is, what factors determine the quality of financial reporting? A number of factors have been advanced in the literature, but in this particular study, we are looking at the factors relating to narrative reporting, in particular, readability of narrative reports. A number of financial or firm-level characteristics have been advanced, but there's limited research relating to personal characteristics of management and board members of the board of directors. In this particular paper, we want to look at a particular aspect of chairmen, which is their biological traits measured by the facial width to height ratio. And we also extend this to predicting the level of testosterone in corporate chairmen. And we wanted to see if, as suggested from biological and psychological literature, if this affects behavior. Overall, we find that the endocrine system may play a significant role in corporate reporting. The effect of masculinity or testosterone on behavior seems to predict lower readability of chairman statement to shareholders. Although we find no evidence that the facial width to height ratio impacts the readability of chairman's letters to shareholders. Some theoretical background relating to the aspect of the study, which is narrative reporting. Two important theories underlying this study. One is the communicative action theory by Habermas 1984 and 87. The conclusion of this theory is that corporate narratives signal faithfulness, truthfulness, sincerity, and also promote legitimacy of the firm. What this implies is that firms use their communication, their narrative, in a positive way to promote the quality of financial information and therefore the decision usefulness of financial information. However, a contrary perspective is that corporate narrative is an impression management technique. What this means is that firms use their narrative in an opportunistic way to provide information that is self-serving, to promote the management or the organization in a way that does not serve positively the interest of shareholders. Corporate narratives could also be used to enhance the figures or information in the annual report. A number of studies actually show support for the impression management theory of corporate narratives. In terms of the framework, the assumption that we make in this study, because we look at the readability of chairman's report, so we make the assumption that whereas narratives can serve communicative function, it is more likely that they also serve impression management function, because the narratives in the annual reports are not subject to audits. Therefore, if they are not subject to audit and they are discretionary in nature, this provides opportunity for management, in this case, chairman, to manipulate the financial reports through their narratives. So we call on the impression management framework of Michael Davis and Brennan 2007. And we look at one aspect, which is the concealment. There are two dimensions to this framework. The first is the concealment of information, and the second is the attribution. We want to look at the concealment of corporate information. And in this case, we are looking at the readability of chairman's reports, which relates to the syntactic characteristics of the financial statement. Other studies have looked at the thematic aspects of narratives, for example, the use of metaphor in corporate report. So we are looking at the readability of corporate reports, not the semantic aspect of corporate reports. So this is where we locate the study in terms of the pressure management framework. Some strands of studies have looked at a number of issues relating to corporate narratives. Some look at the antecedents, that is, the determinants of corporate narratives in terms of management incentives. For example, the manipulation of the financial statement. Some look at the impact of corporate strategy, while others look at the internal or information environment of the organization. Very few studies have actually looked at the personal characteristics of the writer, the communicator. And this is where we come in this particular study. Other studies have looked at the linguistic markers in corporate narratives. For example, a recent study by Lawal in 2025 looked at the metaphor, the use of metaphors in the language of UK chairmen of UK banks during and before COVID-19. Others have looked at readability, and this is related to what we look at in this paper. While others, for example, Yekini et al. 2016, looked at the tone or optimism of corporate narratives. The study of corporate narrative actually teaches towards the consequences of a quality narrative. For example, it has been established that it determines cost of capital, an important ingredient for effective management of a firm. It is also related to future stock returns, as well as price reaction. Other strands of the literature have concentrated on particular aspects of corporate narratives. For example, CEO letters, corporate social responsibility report, risk disclosure, and management discussion and analysis. In this particular study, we are looking at an area that is less research in the literature, which is the chairman's letters to shareholders. In terms of the theoretical background of the study, we draw on the biological literature, as well as literature relating to psychology. Researchers have found that biological traits as well as psychological traits affect variation in corporate policies and risk. For example, there have been studies that relate narcissism of the CEO to corporate outcomes. For example, risk, profitability, and bankruptcy, as well as mergers and acquisition. So we know that from literature, the personality of management actually affects the outcomes, their decisions. We also know that it relates to openness, which is related to what we want to look at in this study. Openness in terms of readability of the information they put out in public. The biological literature comes up with the hypothesis, which we refer to as the testosterone hypothesis. This is also related to the evolutionary psychology and behavioral theory. The idea of this hypothesis is that higher testosterone is linked to wider facial width to height ratio. So the level of testosterone, okay, is related to your facial structure, the ratio between the width of your face and the height. And this has been related to a number of corporate outcomes. For example, higher productivity. It has also been related to political success, as well as, if you are interested in this one, as well as academic performance and journal editor performance. So the idea is that people who have larger or wider face are more likely to succeed in academic world, political world, as well as corporate world. However, the balance of the literature suggests that wider face to height ratio is related to antisocial behavior and unethical behavior. For example, it has been linked to deception and cheating in relationship and games. It has also been linked to unethical behavior in terms of financial reporting. Therefore, if we assume that the testosterone level, which is related to the facial width to height ratio, predicts ethical behavior, then we can link this to poor readability of corporate narratives. Here are examples of studies from the field of accounting and finance that have related this particular theory to corporate outcomes. For example, the paper by J 2014 established a positive relationship between male facial masculinity as measured by the facial width to height ratio and misreporting, as well as sex enforcement action. Therefore, the hypothesis that we test in this paper is that there is a positive relationship between the facial width to height ratio and less readable chairman's letters to shareholders. So we are taking a position that this letter to shareholder is actually a way of manipulating information in line with the impression management theory. Why do we concentrate on chairman's statement? Evidence in the literature suggests that the chairman's statement is one of the mostly read aspects of the financial statement. In addition, the corporate governance codes of many countries identify the importance of the chairman, who is the head of the board of directors. So if the corporate governance code place an importance on the chairman, then it is important for us to start looking at the actions and the words of this chairman. And that is what we look at in this particular study. So our empirical model is specified as thus. We want to look at the relationship between masculinity after controlling for a number of corporate governance and firm characteristics. We also control for the impact of industry and year. Perhaps the most important, one of the most important variables in our model is the variable readability. There are a number of measures of readability in the literature. In fact, by the time I start looking at this, at the count, I think I counted up to 15 or thereabouts. Okay, but the evidence in the literature suggests that these variables or measurements are positively correlated. Therefore, it is likely that the conclusion from one variable or measure will support that of others. But in this paper, I've primarily used the SMOG Index. I've used the SMOG Index to measure the readability of the financial statement. And the index is presented in the slide. However, I use a Python library because this index is already incorporated in a Python library. Even though this is the formula for the index, I incorporated the Python library and inputted all the CEO letters into the Python library to come up with a number of readability measures, out of which I selected the SMOG index. Another important measure is our measure of masculinity. Initially, we measure masculinity using the facial width to height ratio to test the relationship between readability and masculinity. Thereafter, we also calculated the expected testosterone of the chairman given their facial width to height ratio and their age, because evidence suggests that the testosterone level of a person is related to at least the level of their fWHR, their age, and additional factors which we do not have data on. I will come back to that later. We also control for firm size, firm age, performance, as well as other factors that are likely to affect the readability of the chairman's letters to shareholder. So how did we execute this particular study? We concentrated on FTSE 350 firms. Following the tradition in the accounting and finance literature, we excluded financial firms. Our study period is limited to 2004, from 2004 to 2022. We require chairman's letters to have at least 30 sentences for us to be able to measure the SMOG index. The chairman's letters were extracted from the annual report. Where they are in image form, we converted the OCR format to text format using PDF 24. We excluded firm years observations with female chairperson, in line with the literature suggesting a significant difference between the facial structure of men and women. And this is the approach that has been followed in the literature. Accounting data were from Icon and DataStream. One of the challenges we had in this study was the ability to get good photos in order for us to be able to measure masculinity from the picture of the chairman. And I will address the process that we went through later in the course of this presentation. Overall, the sample size amounted to 3,277, made up of 228 firms. in summary, this is the distribution of the observation in terms of industry as well as years. We find that our study is heavily tilted towards industrial firms as well as consumer discretionary. We suggest the need for us to control for industry. Although we find that the distribution across years is balanced. We do not find significant difference between the distribution of the observation across years. Nonetheless, we accounted for year variation in the estimation of our model. I made mention of the measurement of readability. So I will save us some time and skip this slide. The information here is that we require each CEO letter to have at least 30 sentences. And in terms of interpreting the results, one thing that you should take away is that higher SMOG index is related to poorer readability. Okay, higher SMOG index is related to poorer readability. For example, a readability of 11 and above suggests that majority of readers will find the chairman's letter to shareholders difficult to read, which is what we saw in the results that I will present later. I've considered using bug index, which is a relatively new index, but is getting very popular in finance and accounting literature. But I've not completed this aspect of the study, but it's something that I want to look at later to run my data to see if the bug index gives me a result that is consistent with the SMOG index. As I said earlier on, this is perhaps the most challenging aspect of the study. We required chairman's letter, and we got most of this from the annual report. Once we converted the annual report to text forms, the pictures we were able to clip out from the annual report. And we followed a number of guidelines such that we'll be able to measure as accurately as possible the facial width to height ratio. We require that the picture should be neutral expression. That is, the chairman should not be smiling, no teeth is visible, okay? And the chairman should also be facing the camera, no tilted face, no glasses on. And of course, if we believe that annual reports are impression management technique, it is likely that the pictures you get from the annual report will not meet this criteria. They are likely to be smiling. They are likely to have facial expressions. But we accounted for this in the way we measure the facial width to height ratio. We converted all the pictures to 400 pixels so that we can have high quality resolution to improve the measurement of the fWHR. Where we have missing pictures, as we did in many cases, we went online. For example, we went on Getty Images and YouTube, where chairmen were interviewed, or we have videos relating to this chairman. In order to ensure that we are actually getting the right picture, we match the chairman's name, first and last name, against the company's name. The use of pictures from the web has been considered reliable in the past. So we are confident that this method serves us well. In cases where we do not have good pictures, where the pictures, for example, the chairman is not facing the camera, we were able to resize the picture to an angle that is convenient for us to measure the 4 landmarks, and I'll show you these landmarks later, the 4 landmarks that we are interested in. So where we have a rather imperfect picture, we were able to manipulate the picture to be able to measure the landmarks that we require. We require just one picture over the course of the tenure of the chairman. Why? Because the literature suggests that the facial width to height ratio rarely changes after puberty. So after puberty, the ratio is relatively constant. So we only require one measure per chairman, and over the tenure of the chairman. So this is what we are interested in. We want to identify 4 landmarks which will enable us measure the width of the chairman's face as well as the height. When we divide the width by the height, we get our facial width to height ratio. And this has been used in the literature to predict, for example, the performance of US and past presidents. So you can compare that of Abraham Lincoln to Obama. So this is what we are looking for, these 4 landmarks. How did we go? As I was discussing with some of my colleagues before others joined, this project actually started about 4 years ago, but I got stopped because of the need to be able to capture these landmarks. But with the development of Python, okay, I was able to incorporate facial recognition software into Python. So this software will be able to identify 64 landmarks. And I'm only interested in the 4 landmarks that we require to measure the facial width to height ratio. An alternative approach is to use image J rather, but this is manual in nature and we introduce measurement error, greater measurement error into our analysis. Notwithstanding, we still measure the photos using image J to be able to compare the result from Python to the manual measurement of the facial structure of the chairman. One advantage of using Python, however, is that because the facial recognition software requires that we must be able to capture the landmarks. Any photograph that does not meet the requirement is kicked out. That is, there is no measurement for any picture that does not meet the requirement. So if we cannot capture the landmarks, for example, because the picture is too blurry, the Python software will reject the picture. It is either we go back online to search for additional picture that will match the requirements of the facial recognition, or we kick out the observation from the study. We also measure testosterone using this relationship. This has been applied in the literature. Testosterone in chairmen is specified to be a function of facial width to height ratio and the age. We recognize, however, that there are other factors that are likely to affect the testosterone level of a person. For example, your medical condition, your body mass index, and your lifestyle. However, we do not have data to measure these other variables. Therefore, we only concentrated on the facial width ratio and the chairman's age. The literature, as I said, suggests a positive relationship between testosterone level and the facial width to height ratio, but a negative relationship, okay, to age. That is, as we grow, our testosterone level reduces, a relationship which I think many of us in this presentation today will be able to relate to. Therefore, to be able to capture or predict the testosterone level of the chairman, we use clinical data. Okay, there have been research in the literature that measure what we call the baseline testosterone, which is the alpha. That is the alpha in this equation. Okay, in relationship to other factors. For example, the paper by Zhu 2022. This paper looks at 1,486 men between the ages of 20 and 24 to calculate normal testosterone level for each age. So we use the data that they published to identify a beta 2, okay, which is the testosterone slope, as well as alpha, okay? Other data also relate testosterone to facial width to height ratio. We use those clinical data to estimate the slope for our fWHR. So because we cannot observe testosterone, we predicted the level of testosterone using clinical data relating to the age of the chairman. So in this case, our alpha, which is the baseline testosterone, is 20.41 nanomoles per liter. Given the negative relationship between age and testosterone, we use a slope of minus 0.15. And the slope for testosterone to facial width to height ratio is 7.98, which is similar to what was applied in the paper by Ahmed et al. 2019. Okay, and this is another paper that supports our logic. The fact that there is a negative relationship between testosterone level and age. We also apply this data to check if our results are valid, and we find consistent results with the zoo data as well as this data. The first thing we did was to look at the pattern of readability over time. The pattern of readability over time. So we find that there has been a reduction in the level of readability from the start of our study 2004 to 2002 and 22. This is actually contrary to the conclusion by the Financial Reporting Council of the UK that annual reports, the quality of corporate narratives in annual reports has been increasing over time. If that is true, then the likelihood is that the chairman's letters have not contributed to the observed improve in the quality of annual reports. Another conclusion we see from this, that we see from this is that it seems that the UK has not incorporated the plain English requirement, which is an art recommended by the SEC in the United States, intended to improve the quality of corporate reporting. So we see from here that the readability of corporate reporting, at least as it pertains to the chairman's letter, has been reducing over time. The question we should start asking ourselves is what explains this particular trend? So we see from this table the descriptive statistics relating to our variable of interest, as including the control variables. We see that the mean SMOG index is 14.8, suggesting that on average, the chairman's letter is rather difficult to read if we measure from the perspective of the SMOG index. Our average width to height ratio, I should have mentioned this fact, that there are two ways we measure the width to height ratio. Either we take the distance from the lip to the eyelid, or we take the distance from the lip, okay, to the, so we use these two measures in this particular study. On average, the facial width to height ratio measured in terms of eyelid was 2.16, and we compare this to the literature. We find that this is comparable to what we see in the literature, and the same for eyebrow. So to a very large extent, we are confident that we are able to measure correctly, okay, the facial width to height ratio of chairmen. We also present before you the testosterone level using the eyelid and the eyebrow data. All other data relating to the control variables are presented in the descriptive statistic. We evaluated the correlation between the facial width to height ratio and our readability index, as well as other variables in the regression. One thing that pops up quite easily is that we find no correlation between the facial width to height ratio and readability, which is contrary to the impression management and theory that management and persons associated with the firms use their narratives to manipulate the understandability or readability of annual reports. However, we see a positive and significant relationship between the testosterone level, the expected testosterone level of chairmen, and the readability of the letters to shareholders. So even though there's no correlation between the facial width to height ratio, we establish a correlation, a significant correlation between testosterone level and the readability of these letters. Another important takeaway from this correlation matrix is that it seems that our model does not suffer from multicollinearity issue because the correlation between the variables are quite low. We present the first result from the regression of the readability index on our measure of masculinity, measures of masculinity, the facial width to height ratio for eyelid, for eyebrow, as well as testosterone level for eyelid and eyebrow, including other controls. Consistent with what we established in the correlation matrix, we find no relationship between readability and the facial width to height ratio. However, we find a positive relationship, a significantly positive relationship when we use the expected testosterone level of chairmen. This is stronger when we measure the facial width to height ratio from the lip to the eyebrow. Our model consists of industrial effect, as I've mentioned before, as well as firm fixed effect. Again, as we see in this table, the main variance inflation factor is quite low, suggesting that we do not, our model does not suffer from multicollinearity. We also use the robust standard error. However, it is possible that the result we presented suffers from endogeneity issues. Three sources of endogeneity that we explored: measurement error, reverse causality, and possible omitted variable bias. In terms of reverse causality, we argue that it is unlikely that this affects our regression results because the testosterone or the facial width to height ratio is a biological indicator that is not likely to change and is not likely to be related to the readability of the, not related to firm characteristics, and the readability of the financial statement is not likely to affect the level of testosterone or the biological traits of the chairman. However, we are unable to rule out omitted variable bias. Even though our model contains several control variables, it contains several control variables, but we were unable to conveniently say that the model does not suffer from omitted variable bias. Therefore, we also use fixed effect model to see if our results will be consistent as we identified under the O and S regression. So this is the result of our fixed effect model. We find consistent results for the testosterone. Or in this case, we also find a weak positive relationship when we relate the facial width ratio to readability index measured using the eyebrow. So our result is consistent for testosterone level, but somewhat we now say that it is positive rather, when the masculinity is measured using the facial width to height ratio for eyebrow. It is possible that our model suffers from measurement error. In as much as we have taken a lot of precaution in measuring our facial width to height ratio, as well as the testosterone variable, we cannot exclude the problem of measurement error. For example, our testosterone level misses a number of variables, which I already mentioned. Okay, the lifestyle of the chairman, we are not able to observe that. The body mass index, as well as other variables that are likely to affect testosterone other than age and the facial with height ratio. In addition, the clinical data is from a population that is different from the population of chairmen that we made use of. Therefore, we cannot rule out the possibility of endogeneity that is related to a measurement error. As a result, we conducted a bootstrapping to adjust the standard errors of our regression. And again, we see a positive relationship established for testosterone level, even though the relationship when we use the facial width to height ratio continues to be insignificant. Therefore, our results seem to suggest that the relationship between readability and masculinity is driven by testosterone when we incorporate the age of the chairman. So age seems to be a driving force in the relationship between masculinity, testosterone, and the readability of the chairman's letters to shareholders. So in summary, our research question was to look at the relationship between masculinity as measured by the facial width to height ratio and the testosterone level. We use the SMOG Index to measure readability, and we find that there is a positive relationship when testosterone is used as a measure of masculinity, but not when it incorporates only the facial width to height ratio. This may be a result that is consistent with the communicative action theory rather than the impression management theory. It also suggests that to some extent, there is a link between communicative action theory and impression management theory. And perhaps that is why we are seeing contradictory results when we use these different measures. We intend to do further analysis to see if our results stand up to scrutiny. For example, we are looking at using SMOG Index and SMOG Index. These two indices have been used in the literature. We also intend at a stage to use factor analysis or principal factor analysis to come up with a readability index that incorporates all dimensions of readability and see if the results are consistent. Concluding, we appreciate the limitations of this study, not least the fact that notwithstanding our best efforts, the facial width to height ratio may be measured with error. In particularly, if we look at pictures with facial adiposity, which we cannot control for. Okay, it has been established in the literature that the fatty face are likely to give us very bad values when we measure this ratio, but it's something that we cannot control for because the pictures were not taken in a controlled environment in the lab. So this is the conclusion of the presentation. I hope to get your questions and feedback with the intention of improving the paper. Thank you.
Okay, like this picture. Tulu, thank you so much. You explained very carefully about how you measure those readability and also the measure of masculinity. And so I just feel that people should have a lot of questions. And you started with the literature, you justified why this kind of facial measurement should be telling us something about the psychology along, that is associated with the trait, and then it plays an important role in decision making, and in this case, in writing the letters to shareholders. But we may have some. So you didn't find the result actually. If the prediction is true, and you should find that, and you admitted that maybe there are something related to the measurement. So we have a question from Ali here on the chat. Ali actually, indeed, Ali asked something about the measurement. Ali, can you come in, please?
Hi. No, actually, I was asking one more thing to control was firm complexity because over time, literature also shows that increase in readability also becomes due to firm complexity. So I just wanted to check if there was a control for firm complexity. Like, for example, for US firms, we have number of segments, business or geographical, which accounts for complexity that could explain one thing. So I was just looking for that control. And the second thing I said that a simple but a very useful readability measure for something that I'm also using for my studies, simply the log of number of words. So did the results also hold with something like this? Because I think I saw you did have number of words over here. So if you just do, let's say, the log of 1 plus number of words, and that becomes the readability score. So does the same result apply with it? So I was just wondering about that. Like I just had these two questions in mind.
Thank you. And Tulu?
Yes, thank you, Adi. In terms of controlling for complexity, surely complexity is a factor that is likely to affect readability, and I did control for complexity using specific spec items, okay, which is special items.
All
In
right.
the
Okay.
literature, yes, in the literature, we usually use number of segments, geographical segments or business segments. But this
Mm.
data is not available in
Okay.
ICON, which is the database that I use.
Yeah, I was
Therefore,
wondering. Yeah.
I use two variables there, which is your capex and special items.
Okay.
In terms of your second question, actually I used log of words, but I didn't get a significant result
Mm.
when I used that. So perhaps that is consistent with the SMOG index.
Okay. So it requires a
Yeah, I
particular
use
like
the megabytes. I also use the megabytes. Okay, because that is another way of measuring
yeah. Yeah.
readability. Okay,
Yes. Yes.
the
Yes.
megabytes of the document.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so
like.
I used the megabytes of the document as well, and the results were the same. But those measures are not as popular in the literature compared to bug and fog. So the
Yeah. Yeah.
intention here is to go back to fog and bug and see if the results are consistent.
Yes. Fog would be nice. Yeah.
Okay, so do I see some hands from colleagues on this very interesting, to me, a little bit controversial? Yes, I think I saw Juliet
Yes.
first, or Jade. Yeah,
Yeah.
Juliet is, yeah,
Okay.
Juliet.
Thank you. Thank you, Tolu. This, I think, is a very interesting topic, actually. Very, very interesting. I just wanted to ask you, the significance of using the CEO letter, actually, because maybe I missed it at the beginning. And the only reason I ask is from a regulatory perspective, the CEO, that the chairman's message as part of the annual report, that section is not really subject to rules in terms of their disclosure when they disclose in the annual report. So I was wondering the significance of using that CEO letter as opposed to let's say, I think one of the rules is maybe their management report must be clear and fair and show a true representation of the organization. So when you use the chairman's letter, I don't really know what the studies and all the other literature, what it's trying to prove, because I think with any chairman's letter, I think they would always make out that the organization is bigger than what it says, but you use the terminology manipulation. Do you see? So I'm not sure whether you can whether, let's say, from a regulator who's saying that the annual report is not a true reflection, you can use the CEO's, the chairman's message, as opposed to another more stringent part of the annual report that will actually show you and prove that what they're saying is actually wrong. So it was a bit, and then the second point, that was one. Then the second point, readability. I wasn't sure what readability means, because if you take it now in the advent of AI, are you looking at it just from an investor's point of view, taking the annual report and reading it? What about AI? Because I know the regulator also ingests the annual report automatically and reads it. Does your study also look at it going forward in terms of, in the future, perhaps investors will use machines to read annual reports, and whether you would still get the same results, I wonder. So just two things: why the CEO, why the importance of the chairman's letter from the annual report, because there could be other areas of the annual report that are subject to rules, and whether going forward, looking down the line with AI and how AI is just moving so quickly, investors potentially will just ingest the annual report into AI and pick out the key things that they're interested in. And therefore, maybe the CEO message may not be something that the AI tool they'll want it to look at for their investment purposes. But thank you.
Yes, thank you, Juliet. I think you actually brought up two issues that bothered my mind in the course of this study. In the first instance, this paper started from 2004 and ends in 2022, suggesting that it covers a period where AI has not been in popular usage. But that notwithstanding, okay, there is evidence to suggest that chairmen are not actually writing these letters. Even annual reports, evidence suggests that annual reports are contracted out to business consultants. So one issue is that we are not even sure who is writing this. Mm-hmm. But we know that it is signed by the chairman. Therefore, we can assume that the chairman is writing. In the future, it is likely that these letters will be generated by AI, but we cannot say for sure that they are generated by AI, provided we have the signature of the chairman supporting the letters. We assume that it is written by the chairman. And to a very large extent, there is no way AI will write a report and you will not want to have your own, personal input into what AI is writing. So I think in the future, this question of AI, writing annual reports as well as the narratives will be something that we have to consider. Yes, that is true. And I will make mention of that in the paper. Regarding why the chairman's report, you call it the CEO. In the US, there's no distinction between chairman and CEO. So I understand where you are coming from. In terms of the UK, there's a distinction between the chairman and the CEO. the assumption is that the CEO is the all important. But as I presented in the course of my presentation, the chairman's position is also very important and recognized in virtually all codes of conduct. But we have concentrated on studying the CEO rather than the chairman. And the chairman sets the tone for what we are going to read later in the annual report. In fact, the very first few pages of the annual report is usually chairman's letter to shareholders. So they are laying the foundation for what you are going to read. And they are likely to project positively. If I'm looking at tones, for example, you will see that they project positively. Even when the financial statement, the performance is not good, they always find, a way to explain before you get to the CEO statement. Again, if you look at most of the annual reports of UK firms, the chairman's report is one of the strategic reports, and the strategic report is the most important element of the annual report apart from the financial statement. So you see that the chairman's statement is becoming important. And as I also said, it is in fact the most read element of the annual report. From evidence in the literature, it is the most read element of the annual report. So it is high time we started looking at how chairmen speak, not only how CEOs speak. And they are also important in setting the strategic direction of the firm.
Yeah.
To conclude, I will give you a very good example. In terms of Aaron, if you read the chairman's letter to shareholders of Aaron, one of the most important quotation you will see from one of the statements is that we are laser focused on shareholders' profitability, laser focus. So the chairman, Kenneth laid the foundation for the annual report, an annual report that we know that it is of poor quality, but they use the narrative, the corporate narrative, the chairman's letters to shareholders to embellish, enhance the financial report. Not long after the release of that chairman's statement, Aaron went into liquidation. So you see that the narratives are important. We should not only concentrate on the CEO, neither should we concentrate on the financial information. We should also start looking at what the chairman says in order to understand better the financial statement.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, actually, I was thinking about who wrote those chairman's letters as well, and I don't think they wrote it. And so, and I agree they have to sign, but they do not. They probably do not know why they need to sign. They signed it, so so I just do not see that much of the policy implications here. So, for example, yes, if the chairman's letters are manipulated, and you are trying to link the traits of the person who signed that to this manipulation, which is not necessarily, I mean, the causal relationship, but maybe. And so then what? So that do the shareholders benefit from this, or this type of readability hurts the shareholders? So so what are the next thing? What are the welfare thing? So what? So whether or not this is readable, think about politician. I think we discussed this. do you trust them? So to what extent that you can say by looking at them, and then you can interpret their statement or their letter, and that can be used in your investment decisions, for example. So what is the, how do we know this? So what is exactly the policy implications?
That's actually a good question. From the policy perspective, we know that it's been established that readability affects a number of corporate outcomes. Okay, for example, I made mention of cost of capital. Therefore, the question is, what determines this readability issues? If you look at the literature, okay, a facial appearance has been used in the appointments of directors. Okay, beauty, for example, how beautiful a female director is has been used as a predictor of appointment. So what we are saying, therefore, if I can extend this to the present study, is that the facial structure, okay, of the chairman determines their corporate or should determine their corporate behavior. But in this case, we find a negative result. We find a negative result in this case for the facial width to height ratio, suggesting to some extent that perhaps these chairmen are trustworthy in their communication with shareholders, which will negate the impression management theory. However, when we look at the testosterone level, which incorporate both age and the ratio, we find that to some extent, okay, masculinity also plays a role. And we know that masculine male they take more risk, okay, than female. And one of the ways that they can hide their risk is to manipulate the readability of financial statements in order to cover their risk profile. So I think the area of policy implication is an area that I have to polish better, but I can see a link between readability, masculinity, and corporate outcome. But I agree with you, it's an area that I have to polish very well.
Yeah, thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? Juliet.
Yes, please. I did have one other question.
Yes,
Tolu.
please. Yes.
On your SMOG index, please. And what's the baseline? Because on the SMOG index, you said on average, what was it? On the average, it would be 18 point something. So it was, I don't know whether it wasn't okay to read the mean on the SMOG index. I wanted to know, what would the baseline be?
The baseline.
Yeah, so how would you know it was good? Because you're
if you go back to my presentation, the baseline for being difficult is 11.
11, okay, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
11 and above.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Do we have any other? Jeffrey, you have a question, Jeffrey? Please come in.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Dr. Tolu, for your presentation. I have a comment. So, because this topic, I know, is at the heart of corporate governance. And one of the key elements of that is the separation of power between the chairman and the CEO, meaning that the CEO runs the company and the chairman sort of scrutinize their work and report to the shareholder. So that also means if there's any manipulation going on, it will be by the CEO. Then the job of the chairman is to work on behalf of the shareholder to sort of identify this, whatever manipulation that is going on, they scrutinize them and report to the shareholders. So that you can also extend that to say they work in the interest of the public in that case. So my point is, do you think this paper will be better positioned if you sort of look at this element as being able to stand up to CEO rather than whether they are the one doing the manipulation? Because I think a better argument would be the traits that make them not sort of succumb to what the CEO is saying, so that not to appear that the CEO is controlling the chairman, like the Aaron example you've given earlier, because that I think that would be a better position. And that's what I mean. Because if what you have presented means they are also joining in the manipulation and all of that, it means there's no separation of power. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yes, I think it makes sense. Although one will also argue that sometimes the separation of power is theoretical because of management entrenchment. To a very large extent, the CEO is involved in the appointment of the chairman. The code, usually the code will separate the chairman and the CEO, okay? But we know that in practice, there's a network of directors, and CEOs, they choose from their network, okay? So whether chairmen are able to, monitor the CEO, it's even a question that is unsettled in the literature. For example, the managerial power theory suggests that the chairmen are not even able to monitor the CEO. But again, I will look at the angle you are coming from, and perhaps we can discuss further on this.
Yeah, because the way I'm looking at it is that if for example they are part of the job of trying to present a company in a way that is not really its position, that means they are not the what he's saying is that the chairman are not doing their work, because their work is to make sure that does not happen and report to the shareholder. So that is what I'm trying to say. But yes, I think if you, like you said, I'll send some message to you so that we
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And so if that is the case, so do we have more questions? Ali, come again,
Yeah.
Ali. Yeah.
Sorry, I'll come in again. One more thing. So, like, since we're looking at let's say this traits of the chairman, so I'm just thinking it can also impact the readability of other sections of the report as well. I mean, not necessarily chairman's letter. Like, the other part of disclosures, maybe there might be a significant relationship over there, because the essential idea what we're building on is that the facial traits will give you the characteristics of, let's say the chairman, and assuming, like, the chairman, CEO, let's not differentiate them, but that traits will also have an impact on readability of the other part. So I think one thing interesting would be that what if, just to do a robustness or like a supplementary analysis, we pick up one more section and we look at the readability of it, and if it also applies over there, because essentially, like, the chairman, okay, he's not writing it, he is signing it, but he's also signing on the report overall, so it might also have an impact on the readability of the other parts as well, which is why I'm not sure for UK firms it is available, but like as we discussed, like the BOG index, usually for the US firm is given for the entire report. So like a supplementary analysis is, you take BOG index of the entire report as opposed to one section, and then you see, okay, does those traits explain anything about the readability? Because I think there might be some relationship over there. I was just thinking out loud. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. So, yeah, so we do get something like, CEO is very often captured, chairman is very often captured by the CEO. So if CEO looks like, the CEO may select the similar, the person who has the similar facial, the ratio. So they can collude. And in many cases, they probably, they have to be on the same board. And also, there are many manipulations, but maybe not every time of the manipulation is damaging for the firm, for shareholders. So we do not know, actually. And I really trust, the CEO's, previous experience or something. But this facial ratio, do we really trust this thing is playing an important role in corporate decision making? I do not know.
Yeah, it's been linked to stock market crash. I know this is a new area, but take your time and a few moments to research about it in top journals. Actually, it's been linked to stock market crash. Okay, it's been linked to leverage. Okay, the possibility to take on more loans. In fact, it's been linked to agency costs through dividend policy and cash holding. So it's actually more recent, but it's been linked to. Yes, I know that the measurement may be questionable. Okay, the linkage may be questionable, but a theoretical reasoning suggests that there could be a link.
Yeah. So great. I think it's very interesting, and I do not see any hands. Are we all happy about that? And it's already 2:30 anyway. So Tulu, thank you very much for your careful presentation and careful work. And hopefully, this is a very current thing. So yeah, so all the best for the paper. And before I close, Tulu, do you have anything to just
yes, of course I should have. I wanted to say a big thank you for the opportunity to present at this forum, and more especially for the feedback that I've received. I've noted many of them down, and I'll see how I can incorporate the suggestion to improve the quality of the paper. This is an ongoing paper, so I'm still open to a lot of suggestions in ways to improve the paper. Again, thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, so thank you very much, and thanks everybody for your questions, your time, and we will have another one next week. So hopefully we can see each other. Okay, thank you very much. Bye.